hopefully sometime soon. Chris Vannini, theathletic.com, joins us. Paul Catalina, I'm David Smoak on 365 Sports. The article earlier in the week, streaming won't save college football as we know it because it's not saving TV. And Chris, what a great week to run a story like this with all of the speculation, the Pac-12 and Apple TV Plus, and now whatever is the truth with Ion and whoever else. Great stuff on this. What is your reaction, first of all, to what is going on right now with the Pac-12 and what appears to be very heavy streaming with whatever they end up doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that George Kliavkoff, the commissioner, knows that they need some leverage, if they want to get more out of ESPN. There was always probably going to be a good streaming portion of this. But very few people get the Pac-12 network. I think moving the Pac-12 network to streaming is probably a net positive. But when nobody else is really competing for your linear television games, that's where you kind of want to drive the price up a bit. So whether that's Apple, whether that's Amazon, I don't think it's going to do the trick because I think ESPN knows it's in a really comfortable position. But Fox didn't want to re-up, and nobody else has really jumped onto it. So I think the Pac-12 is still trying to find any way they can squeeze a little bit more out of ESPN to get closer to a number that they can agree on.
Chris, is some of the, obviously you said trying to get the number up, but at this point, should they maybe stop with the tricks and just make the best possible deal that they can?
Well, they will. I mean, if there was a great deal out there already, they would have already done it. I think they'll be fine. I think they'll get some sort of mix of ESPN and some streamer and ultimately probably have a number that's close to the Big 12, which I think is what all the smart people expected, before. I think they were probably overpromising the schools what they thought they could get, but ultimately it still is somewhat valuable. Nobody else, ESPN's not going to have anything else in that 10:30 window at night. They don't have the Mountain West. So they need something. I think they'll eventually figure it out. I think they'll be okay. I don't think it's going to be a situation where the Pac-12 is breaking up yet. Now, 6-7 years from now, when all the media deals come up again, that's when I think you'll get major realignment possibly happening again. But I don't see anything happening. I think they'll probably be okay for now and stay together.
All right, so you wrote this article, and there's many nuggets in here. One of the things that I read this earlier in the week, and that the not-so-dirty secret about streaming, it's not actually working. The boom is over. So throwing money at everything, which is what the networks have done, they've now even said they're going to start to be more careful. So you're telling us and your article that streaming is not going to just throw bags of cash at anything now in live sports?
Right. I think a lot of people don't realize that the streaming standalones, your Disney Pluses, your Paramount Pluses, your Peacocks, they're losing billions of dollars per year right now because it's a lot of money to go into content, a lot of money to go into technology and all that stuff. And they say they think they'll be profitable by 2024, 25 potentially, but they're making big cuts right now. Disney's doing layoffs. They announced they're going to pull back like $3 billion in content, not sports, and Netflix is pulling back on content as well. So it's the CEO of Disney, Bob Iger, said recently when he was asked about the NBA, he said, we need to be more selective here. We're going to have to be more selective because the NBA, the NFL, the Big Ten, Fox, the CFP, those numbers are going to continue to go up. And as those continue to go up, they become even more and more of a priority. And that makes it even harder for everybody who's kind of outside that group.
Yeah, so this is probably not the best time for the Pac-12 to try heavy streaming to pioneer something. It's probably in the next TV deal, right? If this one works out for them and everybody stays stable over the next 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, the media deals are the things that spur the realignment. It's why the Big Ten happened. It's why SEC, Texas, Oklahoma happened as well. That's what the Pac-12 is trying to do, trying to have a good enough deal to stay together. That's what the Arizona State AD Ray Anderson said the other day. He said, I think it's going to be enough to keep everybody together for now. But this article I wrote, this is the stuff that's driving conference realignment.
So in the end, do you feel like of Apple TV Plus, I saw numbers of who has what or what. I don't know if they release all their numbers on Apple TV Plus, but where does Apple TV Plus, in your opinion, where do they stand among the others who stream?
Well, they've been selective. They don't throw a ton of money at everything. There's not as much available there. It's also cheaper than the others for that. They've tried to generally try to stay premium. It kind of feels like HBO used to be. Like, generally, if something's on Apple TV Plus exclusive, it's usually pretty good. And they're starting to dip their toes into sports. They're doing Friday Night Baseball that they did last year, and they just did a big deal with MLS, which is $2.5 billion over 10 years, so $250 million a year. But that's for the entire league of like 30-ish teams. Like, they bought the entire league. MLS has to produce it themselves. So it's kind of, they're going all in on MLS, and that's where the New York Post reported that the possibility of the entire Pac-12 on Apple TV is maybe being talked about like MLS. The problem is, there's no other college football on there. Like, are you really going to jump? If you're watching football on a Saturday, are you going to jump out of ESPN or wherever you are to pull up Apple TV to try to find the one game? And it's a lot more difficult than if you had games maybe on ESPN Plus.
Chris, what do you think? What do you think the future of the Pac-12 is 5 years from now?
Probably not good. You'll probably by that point have Oregon and Washington having some suitors at that point, whether it's the Big Ten, most likely, or somebody else. Kind of depends how the UCLA stuff goes. I do think we're kind of heading down that road ever since the Texas-Oklahoma move of consolidation into everybody's going to try to get into the Big Ten and SEC as best they can, because that's where things seem to be heading. That's where the TV deals are making the most money. You saw Florida State's AD said today at the trustees meeting about we're going to be $30 million behind them. We have to figure out how to do that. The ACC schools they're in, depending on who you are, they're either in a good spot or a bad spot. They're stuck together until 2036 because of that grant of rights. So if you're Florida State, you're in a really tough spot. You can't jump up and go to the SEC. If you're NC State, or Wake Forest, it's a good thing because you weren't going to get invited probably to the SEC or something, and now you're at least with somebody for a while.
You've brought up that the Pac-12 is trying to get some leverage with possibly ESPN, who obviously I don't know if there's even an offer on the table, or how much of the talks they've been having for that last time zone, whatever, fourth time zone, Pacific time zone, late night, whatever. Do you feel like some of these streaming stories are being leaked by the Pac-12 to try to force ESPN to react? And do you think ESPN is really worried about that?
I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's leaked to create a reaction from a network. I think I don't know who's leaking this to New York Post or whoever. But it's possible. It's like, hey, we're kind of putting this out there to see what fans think. Like, if we say Apple TV, are fans going to not like it? Then maybe we know not to do it, or maybe they will like it, and we kind of go from there, kind of like market research, so to speak. But it's hard to know who it is, but it's always worth considering with any type of story who is leaking what and what the purpose is behind it. There have been some leaks about the Pac-12 for a while that have been designed to make the Pac-12 look very bad and make the Big 12 look very good and make it look like any minute now the Big 12 might add 4 schools from the Pac-12. That has not happened, and it's probably not going to happen. So with realignment especially, it's always hard to know when what to believe.
Yeah, and do you kind of feel this way like Chris, a lot of people have, is that the stories this week have all, especially Apple TV Plus, was like thud, like everyone like, okay? Was that the reaction you seemed to get or saw too?
Yeah, for the most part. I think it was mostly like, wait, is this Apple TV for everything, or is this Apple TV for just part of it? Like, if you just move the Pac-12 network stuff to Apple TV, or could it be the whole thing? I think that's where it becomes more interesting in terms of the different possibilities.
All right, I'm 63, and we've discussed this, Chris, on the show before. Someone like me that came up through, again, the dark ages of television and how technology just changed everywhere. How much of streaming, and a lot of people get it. I have apps on my phone now, all that. But how much of streaming is maybe the concern, even though the Pac, and you would think West Coast, those fans would understand that better than anybody, How much of that is maybe just enough people don't get it yet?
That's a big part of it, and that's the whole thing with TV in general. That's why it's not like we have a clean break here of, all right, TV ends, everybody go to streaming. It's like a slow migration, and not everybody's making that migration. And so that's why you've got these companies that are basically charging people on both ends. You got to pay if you have them on cable. You got to pay to get their standing streaming thing as well, and it kind of sucks for fans. And now you got to pay for some stuff that you didn't have to pay for before. Everybody jumped in and thought, all right, streaming is the future. All right, young people like streaming. All right, we're throwing billions of dollars in there. This is going to be the future. But it's not growing as fast as they expected. And so now you're seeing a lot of cuts on some of that stuff. And there could be consolidation of streamers buying each other, or prices going up, because the price to, buy Disney Plus is less than, to have Disney on your TV. These companies are making more money through TV. The Disney CEO said, we don't want to sell ESPN or spin it off because ESPN TV makes us money right now. We can't afford to do it. Fox is the only place that hasn't jumped into the standalone streaming, and they felt like it wasn't worth putting billions of dollars onto something, and instead focus on the TV. And they just had the third largest Super Bowl of all time. So they're taking a different approach, and at least so far it seems to be working. Everyone says streaming is the future. We don't know that for sure, and these companies may end up destroying themselves because of it.
Chris, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Jumping on with us, Chris Vannini, making time for us today, theathletic.com. The story he wrote again in The Athletic, streaming won't save college football as we know it because it's not saving TV. We appreciate his time. We'll have